Right, so we have gotten another feedback follow-up from GGG. This one has a few more specifics that people have been looking for. Unfortunately, a lot of bad, but also some good here. I do want to give credit here, of course. There's a lot of people saying that GGG has been like radio silent over time, and I said this in the last video, but they really are keeping up with the feedback. They really are communicating quite a bit, so I don't think that that's a fair criticism of them. However, there's some other stuff in this post that we got to talk about, particularly about harvest crafting in general. This is regarding the feedback that was given just a little while ago. I think it was like a day or two ago at this point. It is in response to that, essentially, that they have listened to all the feedback on their current thoughts and are moving forward with this post here. First thing is going to be Arch Nemesis here. In Delve, Arch Nemesis monsters with the Heralding Minions mod are too punishing. We fixed this internally so that the Heralding Minion mod will no longer appear on monsters in Delve. Deploy this change in an upcoming patch. This is something that, once again, like I said before, I thought that they were going to be working on before this patch, like going into each specific different like side content and making sure that certain monsters weren't too overpowered. Glad that it's happening. This is actually a pretty big one here. Community feedback reports that Arch Nemesis modifiers that convert rewards to quality currency and flasks feel bad. This is when you're seeing those giant explosions of like 500 armor scraps or like 40 flasks or something, and it's like, well, like, it's supposed to feel okay, but in actuality, after you've seen these things a couple of times, it really genuinely doesn't feel that good. Although, I will say in particular, this flask explosion thing is potentially pretty good if you do want to craft flasks for money. That is something that one of my viewers over at Twitch has been doing. So if you get these like really high level modifiers and you get these like super high level flasks, and you get a whole bunch of flasks that drop on the ground, you can craft them, you can make quite a bit of money, so that is something that you can do. Not a lot of people are doing it right now. However, I still agree that these giant flask explosions feel quite bad. Now, they're saying we are discussing this internally, but don't have an outcome to report just yet. Initial discussion suggests there's a fair bit of team agreement around it feeling bad. Good thing, because it means that they're probably going to change it in some way. This is one of the main criticisms that I have with Arch Nemesis in general, is that there are these like peaks and valleys of whether or not the drops from them feel good. And when you get what is supposed to be a peak, but it's like quality currency, which is literally worth nothing at this point, or flasks, which are also most of the time worth nothing at this point, it feels like you've like had the rug pulled out from under you instead of actually getting the thing that you want. They say, as we mentioned in our last post, some players have noted that they prefer item drops to have lower variance, i.e. fewer bigger spikes of value rewards, with the rewards averaged out across more encounters. This is something we're still discussing. So there was a point about this that was brought up that I hadn't thought about before. I was talking with someone once again at stream where they were saying that they really enjoyed the change to it and they liked the idea of like these larger big drops of currency that happen, like these moments of whatever Chris called them or whoever made the post called them, but moments of excitement or something like that. And they were saying that they really enjoyed that. However, I had always disagreed, and I realized the reason why I disagree. It's because this is kind of pushing much more towards like a gambling feeling, right? Like you just need to keep constantly farming because you feel like you're finally going to get that last big explosion that you've been looking for. And it's really like poking at the little gambling centers in your brain. And I think that's the reason why, like, my gut instinct is that I really don't like this way of loot. So I really do hope that they move it towards more consistent currency instead of these big giant spikes. It just feels like this is being kind of hyperbolic, but it feels like they're turning their MTX like marketing and monetization strategy and putting it in the real game, which is like I'm really not super excited about, but let's hope that I am just being hyperbolic here. This is one big thing. We're also aware of feedback around monsters applying permanent marks feeling frustrating. Absolutely. I don't know about you guys, but for the last however long it's been since monsters have been able to apply marks to you that are permanent, like when you just randomly get some mob that's at the beginning of the map that applies a assassin's mark to you, and then suddenly you're just being insta crit by any monster that's around you, and it's the entire map because nothing else has put any other curses or anything on you. It's super insanely frustrating. They say that this is like a technical complication that causes this, but it's something they're working on, so that's good. But yeah, this like perma curse throughout the entire map with a random mark feels really bad. So some changes to Kalandra League. In Lake of Kalandra, rock formations don't allow you to hide from enemy attacks. Has been fixed internally, so that's good. This is something that I feel like generally being able to use the environment around you as it's like coming up and moving down should be something that you can do because a lot of the Kalandra stuff is pretty dangerous. Players have mentioned that when Beyond appears in the Lake of Kalandra, it's difficult to reward ratio doesn't feel right. We're investigating this. They have said here that specific monsters and specific types of rewards haven't really felt super great, and they are actively looking for detailed feedback about specific kinds of old content in Lake of Kalandra. So if you are running Lake of Kalandra, I do suggest that you give this feedback. Probably the best way would be over like through Reddit and such like that. So keep that updates coming for them. Let them know which types of rewards in the lake don't feel good, because they seem absolutely open to changing the lake massively if people can give them enough of that feedback. So they are making it so that the reflecting mist is 50% more common while also accessing other item drops. I feel, once again, like I said before, these really got to be super common. Like the amulet and ring stuff really needs to be like insanely common. As powerful as these mechanics are, make it stupidly powerful so that we can have something like really fun to mess around with this league. This is one of the only things that we have right now. Like last league, the thing that we had that we could mess around with was recombinators, right? This league, the only thing that we really have at this point are these like rings and amulets. So make this like super common, please. Nerf it later, but make it super common right now so we have something to do. Now, on to the part that I'm not super excited about. Mostly positive. All for the rest of this, so for people saying that I'm being overly negative, mostly positive so far, but I'm not going to be positive about this part. Harvest crafting. We are making it so that you can see how much life force of each type you have available at the hoarder crafting station. That's fine. Seems like a basic thing that should have been there. We're also aware that there is a lot of disappointment around certain harvest crafts being removed. Previously, harvest crafting was balanced by how difficult it was to get the crafts that you want. Now that the crafts are tradable, they've always been tradable, let's be real, harvest power was reduced to be more in line with other crafting methods. Understand that there is a call for us to bring those crafts back, but it isn't really possible while allowing harvest to remain tradable. I cannot disagree with this part of it more, and I'll go into a very specific circumstance as to why I disagree with this. While this isn't exactly what you want to hear, I can say that this issue was pushed very hard during discussions to see if any compromise could be made. Harvest crafting potential without being gated by rarity is just too high. I genuinely don't understand this in particular. It feels like they've really pushed it, like you've really pushed this discussion internally, and you've just said, nope, there's no way that we can do it. It's not possible. It's like, is it really completely not possible? You have these levers at your disposal that allow you to gate how hard it is to do different kinds of effects, right? Like saying that harvest crafting potential without being gated by rarity is just too high. You can make it more rare by making it more expensive. You have the levers like the Sacred Blossom thing. The mod that I'm really talking about here, the mod that we really want back for the most part, reroll prefixes, reroll suffixes mod. That's the one that is really making a lot of high-end item crafting just miserable, because you could make this mod cost like 100,000 of whatever color currency, or like 25,000 of every color currency, and like 3 of the sacred blossom stuff. You can make it just absurdly expensive, right? Make it ridiculously hard to get. But the problem is right now is that we do not have a way in the game to consistently save a half-finished item. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, I'll show you an example that actually came up very recently. So what happens in crafting, right, is that typically the way that you craft in Path of Exile is that you either, well, this has been historically, you either get prefixes finished or you get suffixes finished first, and then from there, you've like half completed your item to the point where it can't be bricked, essentially. And this is the way that crafting has been for a very long time, right? So if I go to a random shield, like a titanium spirit shield, a elder, no, not elder, it's shaper warlord, I think is what I was looking for. And the idea here is that I was making a shield for like the slinger build that I've been messing around with recently, right? This is a build that I made back in 3.17. So the idea behind this particular shield is that you are going to be taking these 2 suffixes, which is Shaper Energy Shield when you block, right? You're going to be taking that and you're going to be combining it with the Warlord Recover Life when you block. You're going to be using an Awakener's Orb to put these 2 modifiers together, right? And you'll get a variety of random prefixes. That's typically how this works. And sometimes you'll get like a bad suffix. So The first step in making the shield is getting the suffixes fixed. So the way that you do that is you awaken or orb them together, and you basically hope that you don't get that third suffix filled. And once you've made it to that step, what you'll do is you will go to crafting, you will do suffixes can't be changed, you apply suffixes can't be changed, you hit it with a harvest crit reroll or crit reforge, and what you're going to get is you're going to get like a percentage increased critical strike chance for spells, right? At this step previously, the suffixes on the item are finished, and you have gotten to like a checkpoint in crafting the item, right? So what you would do after this is you would really want to get a +1 to cold spell gems. Previously, the way that you would do this is you would once again craft suffixes cannot be changed, and you would hit it with a cold reforge over and over and over and over and over again until you got that +1 to cold. However, now what can happen is that when you do suffixes can't be changed on the item, it's not going to always happen, but occasionally when you do this, it's going to fill all the prefixes, right? So it's not going to happen super often, but the moment that those prefixes do get completely filled, like this, the item is now bricked, right? And you have to go with RNG-based mechanics to be able to potentially salvage this item. Previously, what you would do before is you would do a harvest, keep suffixes, reroll prefixes until you got an open prefix to be able to continue crafting the item. Now, about the best thing that you can do right now is hit it with a hit it with an annulment orb and hope. That's it. That's the only thing that you can realistically do at the moment. Now, for items that are crafted with the new Eldritch modifiers, there are options for this, which is good. It's obvious that they are okay with this effect being in the game because you can do it with Eldritch currency, right? Like there are Eldritch currencies which can remove specifically a prefix or specifically a suffix, right? Obvious that they don't mind that existing in the game. So it's strange to me that they feel that for everything else, even though like Eldritch mods and such can be, you know, very extremely powerful, some of the better items in the game, for all the normal influence mods, for example, there's just nothing that you can really do. You're just essentially bricked, and you hit it with an annulment orb, and you just kind of hope, right? And I've also seen people saying, well, you can also hit it with like the harvest like augment remove thing. Well, no, you can't. If the item is full, there's no space for additional affixes, so you can't use it. But you can't use this on influenced items anyways, right? Like stuff that's like Shaper or Elder or whatever other influences, you can't use the augment craft on them. It doesn't actually work, right? So it's situations like this where you basically just have to potentially brick the item like that, and I think that's one of the major problems right now, is that this effect simply doesn't exist. It can be put wherever you want it to be put, but it feels really bad, and it feels exponentially worse the higher value of an item you get. An item like this, it isn't actually that big of a deal, right? So if you brick it, you just make it again. It's going to cost you like 6 to 8 divine to be able to make that base again. But for items where you're spending like 10, 20, 50, 100 divines to be able to get the prefixes or suffixes done, and then you brick it, you're suddenly out hundreds of divines, right? For these like really, really super high-end items. And it's just really unfortunate because this mechanic is very powerful in making the game, you know, more fun to craft in. And it really feels like the only people who are abusing this particular craft are like SSF racers, right? That's it. So I don't understand why we can't have this mechanic in the game. Just make it absurdly rare. Make it like 5 Sacred Blossoms and like 75,000 of the other stuff. Just make it so we can potentially save these items instead of just having to RNG toss another random thing at it and potentially brick like 100 divine item, potentially. All right, so now that I'm done going on my giant tangent, yeah, that's my current thoughts on harvest crafting. I'm pretty upset that they think that it is completely impossible to do, but it is what it is. So we'll talk about Eldritch currency now. We're making it so that Eldritch Exalted Orbs, Chaos Orbs, and Orbs of Annulment will drop in lower level areas. We're also buffing their drop rate. So once again, they're willing to have this effect on other items, but not on influence items or anything else, essentially. Like not on items that aren't helmet, chest, gloves, and boots. Essentially, you can't just really craft on any pieces of gear except those, and specifically only those when they have those influences on them. These currency items are intended to fulfill similar functions as some of the remove harvest crafts, they admit this here, while continuing to be gated by rarity. But we're aware that they can only be applied to certain items and are still discussing whether similar solutions for other gear slots are appropriate. We understand that this isn't a full remedy for harvest withdrawals, but it should slightly improve the availability of powerful crafting tools. I mean, I get it, but is it not obvious that we need those things for other stuff? Like, you say here that, like, I mean, we're even admitting that they're available for other things, and they're still discussing whether solutions for other gear slots are appropriate. I don't feel that influence items in particular are so absurdly powerful that we can't be allowed to finish prefixes or finish suffixes and have like a halfway point on crafting these items. It's not easy. It's not a small amount of investment to do this, right? Like that shield that we were making, you could easily spend 50 divine, easily spend 50 divine and never get the mod that you're looking for, right? Like is that an okay amount of investment for that? I think that it is, right? I don't think that it should randomly just be able to brick halfway through and you have to spend another 8 to 10 divine to even get it back to where it was before. I don't really agree with that. I don't really like it, you know? It doesn't feel good to me. So I really hope that they can reconsider, and I really hope that they can give us a way to either finish suffixes or finish prefixes on an item and then be able to have that just like that halfway point in crafting, because without it, a lot of the really high-end crafting stuff is just so absurdly more difficult. And that's going to be it for the video. Not a lot of big changes going on here. They are mainly just saying, you know, that they've tested through a lot of this stuff and figured out what they want to do and whether or not that it's acceptable to have someone in the game. And unfortunately, I'm really not happy with a lot of their decisions here, but at the end of the day, all that we can do is just keep giving feedback, keep pushing on different things, and seeing what happens. I am, once again, pretty upset about the whole, like, prefixes and suffixes can't be finished, and you can't have that, like, halfway point with crafting anymore without potentially just bricking your item, and then you're just out however much it was to get to that point. Really does feel pretty bad, because one of the coolest things in this game, one of the hallmarks of Path of Exile, I feel, are these like big item crafts that you can do. It's one of the more interesting and fun things that you can even do in this game. And it just really does feel like every once in a while they're just like, yeah, we don't want people to be able to make those crafts. And they're already not easy. They're already crafts that not that many people can even aspire to. But I think the feeling that people can eventually aspire to get there is a good thing, right? Like, you always like having those things that you can look up towards and be like, yeah, maybe one of these leagues, when I finally get there, I'll be able to start doing this or doing that. Like with juicing maps, right? Like, you see these people on whatever it is, Twitch, YouTube, whatever, doing these big crazy juice maps, and you're like, yeah, maybe one day I'll be able to get there, but instead they remove it, and you see these people doing these big crazy insane crafts, you're like, yeah, maybe one day I'll be able to get there, and instead they remove it. So not super happy, but at this point, it seems like they've kind of made up their mind. But best thing that we can do is hope that they change it.